NBC 10 at Issue starts now.
The pipeline predicament. Neighbors say it's a project that could put their lives at risk.
Very combustible, flammable materials that will go boom and take what's ever there out.
Or is it a priceless asset that will bring jobs and affordable energy to the area?
It's a good project and, something that I think the economy would really benefit from.
As a local community battles a big corporation, this morning we hear from both sides.
Good morning and welcome to NBC 10 at Issue. I'm Chris Cato. So here's the issue. Sunoco Logistics wants to put a propane pumping station in the middle of a highly desirable area of Chester County. As you can imagine, the people who live there are saying, no way, this is residential. But their township's zoning laws may not protect them.
In 2013, Money Magazine ranked West Goshen Township the 10th best place to live in America. No surprise to Alan Feinberg, who moved here in 1987.
It's a beautiful area. There's a lot of great businesses in this area. There's a lot of great schools in this area, a lot of great neighborhoods, this being one of them, and we want to maintain that.
Which is going to be difficult, he says, if Sunoco gets its way. The energy giant has an ambitious plan to convert an old petroleum pipeline into a conduit for propane and ethane, pumping it from its source in the Marcellus Shale region of western Pennsylvania, 300 miles east to Sunoco's refinery in Marcus Hook. Doing so will require pump stations to be built at various intervals along the pipeline. And Sunoco has decided one of those must be in West Goshen, literally in Kevin Link's backyard.
Why this location? Why in a residential area?
The pump station would be built on East Boot Road, just to the right of the cylindrical water towers you see in this video from Skyforce 10. This land is zoned residential, and as the view widens, you'll see just how many homes are located in the immediate vicinity. To pump a flammable, explosive material here is courting disaster, says residents.
This is a potentially dangerous, very dangerous facility to have plunked down in smack in the middle of a very densely populated area.
Lily Middlebrooks and her neighbors rallied opposition. Here's a timeline of what happened next. In March, Sunoco went before the West Goshen Zoning Board seeking a variance to build the pump station, and neighbors turned out to express their disapproval. At a community meeting in April, more than 200 residents peppered Sunoco officials with questions and criticism. Sensing a possible defeat at the local level, Sunoco withdrew its zoning application and in May filed a petition with the Pennsylvania Public Utility Commission. That petition asked the PUC to rule that the pump station is necessary for the convenience and welfare of the public and therefore exempt from local zoning. A disingenuous move, says neighbors.
I don't think they've been very truthful or honest with the community.
Now these homeowners are gearing up for a fight in Harrisburg, even as Sunoco is telling investors the pipeline project will go through.
We don't actually believe that. I mean, we're here for the fight. Every once in a while, David does get Goliath.
And it looks to be a long, drawn-out battle. Joining me now on At Issue, two of the people you just saw in that story, Alan Feinberg and Lily Middlebrooks. Lily, let's start with you. Not only are you a resident of West Goshen Township, you're also an attorney who represented the homeowners there in the zoning matter that was before the township. Let's talk about this. Let's get one thing straight. You homeowners aren't against the pipeline project itself or the idea of pumping these liquid natural gases across the state. You just don't want this pumping station in your backyard.
That's correct. There are a large number of folks who are very concerned about it. It's not your typical NIMBY, that they call it, argument where it says not in my backyard. This is a very different argument. we have a very densely populated residential area, and they are simply plunking down a very dangerous pumping station in amongst of many, many homes and lots.
You call it dangerous. We heard you call it dangerous in the story. How do you know it's dangerous? Have you seen incidents in other parts of the country where these pump stations have failed and led to some sort of disaster? Or?
Well, I think on two fronts we know it's potentially very dangerous. One, pipelines that are very old. In fact, this original pipeline dates back to 1931. They have rehabbed various sections of it. But anything that's mechanical can break down. And because they think these things have broken down for other types of products, that's one source of concern. But when you add to it the dangerous types of chemicals that they're indicating they want to put into these pipelines, propane, ethane, and possibly butane and other smaller degrees of other products, they are very volatile, very dangerous chemicals because their normal state is a gas. And then when they're put in these pipelines, they're put under very high pressure to keep them as a liquid. And if you have a rupture, a mechanical failure, And a pumping station has many moving parts. You have these pumps, you have pipelines that are above ground now. When it comes out, it will revert back to its natural state, which is a gas, which can then emit a vapor cloud. And a vapor cloud is typically something you don't smell, something you don't hear, something you don't see. And it will drift, depending on the prevailing winds, to an area and seek a source of ignition. And you can look at any type of chemical manufacturing, and this is a big danger.
But you haven't found a specific example of where one of these pump stations has failed. And I go back to the pump station because that's the matter specifically before the PUC that it has to decide. Are these pump stations a necessity? You haven't found a specific example of these causing incidents and problems.
No, because there isn't another one built yet in this state. We have asked, the citizens have asked to be able to go visit one, and we have yet to receive a response.
Alan, let's talk about the questions that you and the homeowners have put before Sunoco. We saw in that story there was this huge community meeting in April that Sunoco actually sponsored, and a lot of people grilled and had criticism and questions. Did you get the answers you were looking for?
I don't feel like we've been getting the answers from the very beginning of when we've gotten involved with the whole Sunoco pumping station and all that. We've had smaller meetings where it originally started out, they presented to a small number of residents, and then it moved forward to a larger group and a larger group and a larger group. And we still, to this date, still haven't had a lot of the questions answered from the very beginning with regards to safety, notifying the residents. In fact, if there is an emergency at some point, how are they going to be notified? The type of equipment they're using, where can we go see this equipment? Where can we put our own eyes and hands on it and be able to physically go out and say, this is what you're looking to put here, and then we can look at safety records of those particular things. But without having that information, it's impossible to even make a knowledgeable judgment on that.
Well, those questions are understandable, and we also wanted Sunoco to answer our questions about the safety of these pump stations and the pipeline itself. Again, the existing pipeline has been there since 1931, although parts have been replaced over the years. And also, we wanted to ask them the central question you're asking: why West Goshen? Why put it here in amongst all of these homes? So we asked Sunoco to join us on this show. Their spokesperson said they're not doing interviews at this time. So all we really have to go on is this amended petition that they've submitted to the PUC, which tells us that Sunoco wants to install 18 of these pump stations along this 300-mile pipeline. And this petition says that Sunoco is placing these stations along, quote, points along the pipeline where the energy for transporting ethane and propane drops below an acceptable level. And here's the part where they do address public safety in this petition. The petition says, quote, to ensure safety of the public, valve control stations will be located throughout the pipeline system, specifically upstream of large concentrations of population. So these valve control stations are going to be put in place as a safety valve. They will shut off, according to Sunoco, they'll shut off the flow of gas if there's a problem, if there's a leak, a drop in pressure. Does that put you at ease any?
No.
During their presentation to the neighborhood people, is they indicated an approximate 13-minute response time, and they're pumping liquids at 1,400
a 13-minute
PSI.
Response time for getting
the valve shut down and having the flaring tower starting to do its job of burning off the liquids. But in a catastrophic event, 13 minutes is a long time to be pumping natural gas through a pipe.
Well, I would love to hear their response to that. Because
as would we, as we've been asking over and over again for responses to that.
All right, so there's the safety concern, and then there's another factor here, eminent domain. And that's because Sunoco's plans aren't limited to this one pipeline. They've announced very publicly that within 2 years they want to build a second pipeline that would run parallel to the one that's going underneath your homes. And for people like you, Alan, whose property adjoins Sunoco's property, you could lose part of your backyard, if not more, here.
No question. I mean, that's one of the concerns that we've had from the very beginning, is that they have a fairly decent-sized property, although they're only located, in some cases, less than 160 feet from the back of somebody's property with the pumping station. Is that with the plans for Mariner 1, then the Pennsylvania pipeline, and then possibly Mariner 3 or another pipeline potentially running out to Reading, that could become an industrial facility actually back there right in the middle of West Goshen, and specifically at a very important intersection of 202 and Boot Road, which I'm sure when you came out you saw how well traveled that road is.
It's a hugely busy road, and so there's a lot at stake here as Sunoco goes before the Public Utility Commission seeking this approval to get this public utility status. As I mentioned, Sunoco wouldn't go on camera with us here. Their spokesperson did offer to answer some questions in writing. I submitted a lengthy list of questions. I did get a response. It's not an answer to all of the questions as I was looking for, but this is the general statement he sent me. Sunoco Pipeline is committed to working with townships all along the Mariner East pipeline, including West Goshen, to address local issues with the building of structures for our Mariner East pump stations and valve sites. Because we have a number of petitions pending before the Pennsylvania Public Utility Commission, which will ultimately determine the necessity of these facilities, we will reserve further comment as we prepare to address for the Commission issues that are critical to the project. A long way of saying no further comment. But are you encouraged to hear that they're willing to work with the township?
Well, we've heard that repeatedly, and there's, actions speak louder than words. And in this case, we've heard a lot of words, but we've never seen any actions to date. This very simple questions that were asked in the very first zoning hearing meeting haven't yet to been addressed.
We'll be, of course, updating everyone on this as this fight moves through as you go before the Public Utility Commission and make your argument for why you don't want to see that pumping station there. It's a slow process. When we come back, we're going to talk to a state senator who has asked the PUC to hold a hearing in Chester County. We'll hear what he has to say.
This is NBC 10 at Issue. This is NBC 10 at Issue.
Welcome back to At Issue. As we discuss Sunoco's plans for a twin set of pipelines that would stretch across the state, carrying valuable and much-needed propane and ethane from western Pennsylvania to a distribution point on the Delaware River, it has already created a trail of litigation. And joining us now is Senator Andy Dinniman, a Democrat who represents Chester County. And Senator, even though West Goshen has been redistricted out of your district, you're still a strong advocate for the people that are fighting this current fight.
Absolutely, because part of this line goes through my district in other townships. And I've been joined by Senator Rafferty, who represents a significant part of Chester County as well. And we do oppose the placement of this line without adequate consultation from the citizens. One of the problems is that Sunoco came into town saying they want to talk to everyone. Then they turn around when they got some opposition and said they're going to go to the PUC and be classified as a utility. If they win that, then they don't have to come back to town. They get what they want. In fact, it's not only disingenuous, but is contrary to recent court decisions that said that the act that created the Marcellus Shale impact fee had also taken the right of zoning away from local municipalities. The courts ruled you cannot take that right away from the municipalities.
You wrote this letter, very strongly worded, to the PUC chairman and the other members of the PUC, but you don't come out in this letter and ask them to deny Sunoco's petition. Why not?
Well, what we are saying is that they have to be much more careful where they place these lines. I have a series of legislation, and this legislation would give citizens much more input, much more information in where we place gas lines, so that this type of activity doesn't take place without citizen participation. While interstate lines are under the jurisdiction of FERC, a federal agency, Pennsylvania is only one of 2 states in the Union that has not law and control over intrastate lines. So subsequently, we need to get hold of these intrastate lines. Also remember that Chester County has the 3rd largest number of gas lines in the Pennsylvania, and yet we don't produce Marcellus Shale, because in order for there to be a profit, this gas has to get to a marketplace, and it goes through our county to get to the ports of Philadelphia, Wilmington, and Baltimore even. So we have a vested interest in Chester County to make sure that these lines are placed in the safest place.
Let's talk about this PUC chairman, Robert Powell, who, by the way, lives in Chester County.
He does indeed.
He was, until recently, a member of this coalition called the Greater Philadelphia Energy Action Team, which has opened openly advocated for this cross-state Sunoco pipeline. He recently resigned that position after some people raised the issue of a potential conflict of interest with him helping decide, as a member of the PUC, this matter in West Goshen. Should he still recuse himself from discussion in this situation?
I know Rob, and he's a friend, but I do still believe he should recuse himself. Rob is an excellent PUC chairman. He's a very good person. But I think when there's any potential of people assuming there might be some partiality, and once you say you're leaving something to say it won't be, then you've already, in essence, said people could perceive it that way. Yeah, so I think he should recuse himself.
He directly linked himself to the appearance of impartiality by saying, hey, this may look like a conflict of interest here.
Yes, and I was sort of surprised he did it that way, because in essence, you're saying people could perceive it that way.
I wanted to ask him about that, too. I called his office. I spoke with his spokesperson, and she said that Mr. Powelson is not commenting on that at this time. I asked her if he had considered recusing himself, and she said it's too early. He says it's too early for him to consider that in this process. So we'll see what happens as this goes before the PUC. No, absolutely.
Every decision that's made, every issue that occurs is a matter of precedent, and affects not only the townships that this Mariner line goes through, but affects what will happen in the months and the years ahead. Because there's absolutely no profit from Marcellus shale gas unless it gets to the marketplace. So we accept the fact that there has to be gas lines, but its placement has to be done in a public way, has to be done in a safe way, and Sunoco should not be seeking permission from the PUC, but they should stand before each township's board of supervisors and make their case. In fact, it involves 2 pumping stations in Chester County. Another one is in Upper Euclid, and it involves one of these valve stations, which will be in Wallace Township. And Sunoco and these other companies shouldn't be running away from the local residents and going to the PUC to get an exemption.
Senator Andy Dinniman, thank you for your time.
My
joining
pleasure.
us on this very important topic. Well, Sunoco would not join us on this show, but up next, we will talk to one of the major players in the energy industry in this area. He's the chairman of the Greater Philadelphia Energy Action Team that we were just discussing, Mr. Powelson resigning his membership from. And they believe that Sunoco's plans are part of an economic boom that is taking place here. You'll hear what he has to say.
This is NBC 10 at Issue. This is NBC 10 at Issue.
Welcome back to NBC 10 at Issue. As we take a look at Sunoco's plans for a cross-state pipeline that would carry natural gas byproducts from the Marcellus Shale region of western Pennsylvania to the Philadelphia area. Joining me now is Philip Rinaldi. He's the CEO of Philadelphia Energy Solutions, which operates the largest oil refinery on the eastern seaboard. Thank you for taking time to be here with us, sir. Chris. Let's start with this pipeline. What could this mean for the economy of this region? How will it benefit the people living here?
Can we kill that for a second? If you want me to talk about the Sunoco Logistics pipeline, I can't do that. That's not my business. I don't own Sunoco.
You had no problem talking about the Sunoco pipeline when you co-wrote this guest column for the Delco Times in March.
May I say this?
You went, sure. You went into great detail here, discussing
I have no problem saying this kind of thing.
Well, that's what I'm asking you about.
Well, the pipeline is all about taking stranded materials out in western Pennsylvania and bringing them into a place where that you can add value to those materials. And that added value would be taking place in the context of the Sunoco Logistics pipeline. They're bringing that into Marcus Hook facility, which is some 10 or 12 miles south of Philadelphia. And, and that's the place where it would become their distribution hub and where you'd be able to build enterprise based on those materials. And,
but what,
so that creates jobs.
Jobs? We're talking
creates
jobs?
Yeah, sure. Creates jobs. It creates jobs just for the logistical transport of the material, and then once the material is there, independent people may come and try to source that propane, for instance, and build businesses based on that propane.
Has anyone put a number on these jobs that would be created because of this pipeline? And
not that I know, and I'm not involved in that pipeline, so I don't really know. But for instance, some people would like to see a propane dehydrogenation project get built. Those are massive investments. Those are, more than $1 billion kind of investments. So the level of job creation is quite significant.
This isn't your pipeline, as you've said. It's not PES's pipeline. You've spent so much of your career, though, finding innovative ways to extract and transport natural resources. You know the technology very well. In your opinion, are the people of West Goshen's concerns over this pump station, are those warranted?
Well, we operate a lot of pump stations at Philadelphia Energy Solutions. We pump all the time. I don't know, we have thousands, literally thousands of pumps in our refineries, and those pumps are operating 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year, and they operate very, very safely. I think there's a very bright prospect for this region. There are so many great factors that are happening here that I think all this energy is definitely going to come into Philadelphia as a hub, and good things will happen from that. The more manufacturing businesses that we have, the more businesses that serve those manufacturers that we'll have.
Phil Rinaldi is the CEO of PES, and a wealth of knowledge about our wealth of resources here in Pennsylvania and throughout the world. Thank you for your time.
Right.
And we will be right back on NBC 10 at Issue to wrap things up right after this.
This is NBC 10 at Issue.
Welcome back to NBC 10 at Issue. For the first time ever, a Master's in Business Administration holds the top spot as the most popular postgraduate degree. An MBA now accounts for 1/4 of all advanced degrees in the U.S. That's according to the Department of Education's latest research. Until now, a Master's in Education was the most popular graduate degree. Educators believe MBAs are more popular because it gives students an almost guaranteed return on their investment. That's it for this edition of NBC 10 at Issue. Thanks for watching. You can join me again on NBC 10 News weekday mornings starting at 4 a.m. And to all the dads out there, have a great Father's Day.
This is NBC 10 at Issue.